Hello. Good morning. Lovely to be here. I've been presenting online for how many years? I don't know. And it's such a pleasure to get on a plane and see friends, old friends, and see new friends, people I met online. Anyway, that's not the point. But Jonathan, everybody, thank you very much, Dula, for inviting me. It's great to be here. I'm going to be talking about AI. And my presentation is the dance of the Doppelgängers. Actually, Doppelgängers. It's got an E mark. AI in the cultural heritage community. So AI seems to be the buzzword at the moment. Everyone seems to be talking about it, but I'm going to focus on our community cultural heritage and look at problems that's evolving, like copyright, questions of authenticity. Do you agree with that? Problems, ownership, where did this stuff come from? Who owns it? Who has the rights? Looking at the bias. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
Yes.
Problem, big problem. And the hallucinations, of course. Okay, there's a very polite word of saying that these AI platforms cause havoc by creating falsities, lies, and I'm going to give you a bunch of examples as we go. So let's start with GPT. Who is actually using ChatGPT? Yes, I'm talking to friends who know it. It's wonderful, isn't it? But of course, we have to be very careful. Because in our field, we have to be accurate. We have to make sense. And who's been using the AI generative art, Mid-Journey? We'll go home. You fine, good. So everything I say is be very familiar to you, and you're good. Okay, so we know that GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, developed by OpenAI, and it's currently free, but sometimes it refuses to do anything unless you pay $10 a month because it says it's too busy. But it can generate an answer to almost any question it's asked. Now, I asked ChatGPT to describe what it can do. And in half a minute, of course, I got this wonderful, well-informed answer. Certainly, he said, he, she, it, whatever. ChatGPT is trained on massive amounts of textual data, enabling it to understand the nuances of human language and generative approach, appropriate response. Okay, but it's a language model, and we know it's built on many hundreds and thousands of articles or blogs that it's found on the internet, just dredges the internet and pulls things up. And I asked ChatGPT, what can't it do? And it gave me 5 basic things. This is its answer. It cannot, and it calls itself it. It cannot fully understand human emotions and feelings. We know that. Because
Turing test. Turing test.
Yeah, well, it passes the Turing test, sadly. But it cannot perform any physical tasks or interact with the physical world directly. Well, we know that as well, but at least it knows it, which is more important. And ChatGPT can simulate a conversation and provide answers to users' queries, but it can't replace human interactive completely. So if anybody who saw the press conference with the 5 robots this week, yeah, did anybody see that? No? Amazing. Asking these enormous robots like Amica, whether they will replace human beings, they all shook their heads and said, no, never, never, never. Well, the women said, never, never, never. Stupid expressions. But so we don't have to worry that this stuff, well, there's a lot of kind of hype around this, that they're going to take our jobs, they're going to kill all the humans, they're going to take over the world. It's just, you know, my presentation is to put this into perspective. So it can't simulate a conversation and provide answers, and it can't replace human interaction. And it's very sad if it thinks it can. Actually, it itself says it can't. It also can't generate completely original content that's not based on any pre-existing data. So it obviously can't predict, like the lottery. But it also, its data, it finished, it's very strange calling it. I might call it he, because it makes it easier for me.
What?
I don't know why.
She, call it she, call it a she.
She?
Yeah. Call her she.
You call it she? Yes. This is interesting. Let's take a vote. Who calls it in their mind? Who calls it she? Who calls it he? Well, I'm going to call it he. Can't predict. And why is that? Because it was trained on data, but it finished training in 2021. It doesn't actually know very much. It certainly doesn't understand current affairs. So another thing, it can't make moral or ethical judgments and can't determine what's right or wrong. Well, that's a severe problem, actually, because it spews out a load of rubbish, and sometimes it's very offensive. There's Amika that she was on stage the other day with her crazy expressions. So I'm trying to work out what it can and can't do. So I asked ChatGPT to write me an essay on contemporary culture in the style of Dr. Susan Hazan. That's me, okay? So I set it, this task within less than a minute. I got this amazing article and I read it and I thought, I would say that, but I didn't say that. I would never say that. How dare it quote me? I didn't say it. And I felt like somebody had scraped my brain. I took all my information, all my knowledge and everything I'd ever produced and did a mishmash and put it online. But it's quite problematic. Then I asked it, okay, excuse this vanity here, vanity of vanities. Who is Dr. Susan Hazan? And it came out with this very complimentary article on me, as if a Wikipedia article. But sadly, was full of falsities, but sweet ones. It says that Dr. Hazan has been recognized for her contributions in the field of digital cultural heritage and museums. In 2017, she was awarded a Chevalier des Arts et Lettres by the French Ministry of Culture and Communication. In 2021, she was named at one of the top 20 most influential women in the arts and cultural sector by Artlist. Sadly, I wasn't. You know me from there, I didn't get that, did I? But
You should check. Maybe
I did. I thought maybe it knows something I don't know. I went to Artlist and I had to check.
French embassy and say, see, where's my Chevalier?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it says here.
Send it to them. It's a complaint.
Was there another?
It's actually very unsettling because this is the stuff that's out there. And the nice phrase is hallucinations, it's lies. Okay, but we do know, I'm going to recommend two books because I'm crazy about these two books. And one is Janelle Shane. Have you all read this? You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. It's the best entree into AI. And she actually says that AI is much closer in its brain power to an earthworm than the human being. And if you read this, it's a very easy read. It's sort of cartoons and but it's serious stuff, and she just writes it beautifully. The level is, if on a good day, the level of a 7-year-old child. The capabilities. There's no context, obviously, and there's no depth, and there's no emotion, and there's no understanding. So I would say that an earthworm is a pretty good kind of description. So when you ask ChatGPT, what is it and what can it do? It throws up this page and it says, well, the examples, what I can do is explain quantum computing in simple terms. That's good. I can create creative ideas for a 10-year-old's birthday, very useful. And I can write HTTP in JavaScript. I've actually written text code. It works beautifully. Sometimes there's some mistakes, but yeah, it's very useful to write code. You write songs, poems, you just ask, you've done it, you do it. But it's what its capabilities. It remembers what the user said earlier in the conversation. When I first asked to describe what I do, it didn't know who I was. And by the second or third conversation I had, it knew who I was and added all this new information. So yeah, it does have a capability there. And it allows you to have follow-up corrections, and it's trained to decline inappropriate requests. We'll get to that in a minute. That's actually quite interesting. I've checked all these things. And what are the limitations? May occasionally generate incorrect information. No, it always generates incorrect information. And we'll get to that. And may occasionally produce harmful instructions or biased content. We'll talk about that. And it has a very limited knowledge of the world, as I mentioned. Before anything after 2021, it just doesn't know. But what we don't know, that behind all this is a bunch of people, that's sitting there writing and correcting our input, grunt work. And that's going on, and they're getting paid $5 an hour, and they're probably in all sorts of strange places. And this is going on to make our corrections. When you add the button at the bottom, is this correct? Was it good? Do you like it? So let's move on to generative AI art. And of course, we have Midjourney and DALL-E. And I asked both of them to describe, well, Ms. Jenny, I said, what's the prompt? Draw me the instructions for a prompt to describe the Midjourney bot. On the left is Midjourney, on the right is DALL-E. Both of them gave really nice story, but they don't do text very well, as you may see. You've seen that, the garbled text that comes in the background. So you can't reduce it professionally. You have to go in with Photoshop and make your corrections. But it has this sort of self-image of this bot. So that I thought was quite enlightening. But of course, behind the prompt are these sort of algorithms. And we're sitting in the right building here to understand the power of the algorithm. Okay, this is serious stuff, because there's a lot of bias and all these questions of copyright and math washing. So I'm going to address these three issues. There's a widely held belief that because math's involved and these algorithms are pure, that they're automatically neutral. But when there's bias in, there's bias out. We all know that. But we may not always be aware of it. Although we know it, intellectually we know it, professionally, we do not act on it. An interesting article in Wired recently, they noticed that if you ask for a question about who's in jail or some prisoners or anything of this phrase like that, there's an unusual amount of non-white people with a negative adjective associated with that person, which is very strange. And they put their red this was in DALL-E, and they put their red team on this because it's quite problematic. And they said that enough risks were found that maybe it shouldn't generate people anything photorealistic. Now, I've been actually following that a bit, and I searched for people in jail. And this is what I came out with. And previously, I'd seen a lot of non-white or people, but now it's a bit difficult to tell. They've sort of tweaked it a bit, but it's something we should be following and trying to understand. But it's actually more serious than that. And of course, when you've read my paper, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read my paper, then please do, because this is so serious that families their lives were ruined by algorithms. And for example, in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, there were 20,000 families wrongly accused of child care benefit fraud. And that's wrong. They weren't. They didn't actually try and fraud make fraud, fraudulent. But the problem was a machine learning system was used, and it was trying to spot the wrongdoing. And this caused financial ruin and evictions, broken homes, and the entire Dutch government in 2021 had to resign. This is serious stuff. This is what math washing is about. Another strange story. Have you heard of Boris?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the story. Well, I'll just skip the screen then. I won't. I actually had a very interesting conversation. We presented it recently in Marseille on the same panel, and we had lovely conversations about why he didn't want to receive the prize that he was offered for his beautiful photo. It's called in the Studio Manesia series, Fake Memories. They're all fake. It's created in DALL-E. His Midjourney. And he was really concerned that the judges of the competition couldn't understand when people were generating something through AI. And he was challenging the system. So when they insisted on giving him the prize, he said, no, I'm not going to take the prize. You have to understand this. And he was hoping to kind of spark controversy, which he did. And it was all the press and all the blogs and everything. It was serious stuff. But what he is trying to do is get this conversation going. I mean, what is the limitations? What's happening around AI and generative art? And this math washing is another problem. I mentioned it, that data and the science is used to justify policies and strategies. And sometimes this is so destructive, it has far-ranging and very tragic results. So mouth washing is a phenomena. I want to do it, but the computer says no, can't get a mortgage, somebody arrests me, can't get on a flight, low fly list. These things are happening all the time, and the computers are saying no, and people, the human in the loop, has not been added into this experience. But there's some hope. One of the reasons for this, I was talking to my sister about this recently, she said, well, think about all the people who write code Who are they? And they're sort of basically, there's a category, male, excuse me, anybody in the room, male, white, excuse me, anybody in the room. Sometimes people on the spectrum with incredible talents, they do not empathize with these systems. They may make mistakes. I don't know if that's politically correct to say that, but it's something I'd like to research. But also designers don't have the training tools or the capacities to identify these sort of ethical issues. That's not their field. So the majority are engineers or they come from computing background, which I'm sure all of you do here, but I'm sure you all empathize all the time and you now are more than ever aware of this problem. But also senior management could interfere and say, well, what about profits? Somebody who fought this recently is Frances Organ. This is another book you really should get your hands on. I think there's a digital version. And she was the whistleblower that recently reported to Congress about what Facebook has been doing behind the scenes, generating profit over human beings who are being harmed, young women who in Instagram and their body image or self-image, profits are prioritized over the damage, the political damage that's happening, which we know about. I think she's very brave. So I'm sort of 2/3 through her book, so I really shouldn't be recommending it, but it's worth a read. It's to understand how companies like Facebook get away with what they do and what goes into these algorithms and the processes. So if you think about stable diffusion, which is the process behind Midjourney, it is using millions of unauthorized copies of images, probably billions. They're copyrighted. Nobody gets to ask anything. And often the artists don't even know about it. And they estimated in an article I read recently that if you think about $1 per image, that's a misappropriation, something like 5 billion. It's a fortune of copyright value in there. But Matthew Butterick is now starting a legal campaign, and he's trying to get a recognition and some sort of address to the idea of not only the images being used, but the artistic substance of the artist. And we'll get to that in a minute. And at the same time, artists at the moment cannot opt out. So that's actually very problematic. But now we have the EU AI Act. Have you come across this?
No,
Yeah.
we're not allowed to here now. Yeah,
Not allowed to?
we're not in the EU.
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Forgot about that.
Forgot.
Well, I remembered in the airport. Mind you, at every airport now. Don't use your British passport anymore. Okay. So this act actually something just came through my email. I haven't read it. It's moving quite quickly through the system, and it's about different processes, about the risk involved, and looking at the CV scanning tool and applications. It's quite interesting to see this process, and it's not gone through the system yet. It's going through, so they are in Europe at least, not here, but in Europe there will be solutions to combat this sort of AI problems, and there are some sort of self-regulation tools in place now, which is pretty new. And how am I doing time-wise? Another minute or two? Are we okay? Okay, I'm at the fun part now. So prompting, some of the prompts are banned. I was doing some research for Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, and you can't search on the term Holocaust. It's forbidden. And there's actually a list of banned words, and some of them are body images, taboo drugs, and all sorts of things. And this list changes all the time, so you can check and see what you can and can't use. But just to end on a
What said honky? You can't talk about people from Hong Kong anymore.
I have no idea, but somebody put that into the list. But they have a reason, because it's very scary to demonstrate in Hong Kong at the moment. Very dangerous. Okay, so I want to just make a kind of a sweet ending to all my fear-mongering. I did a series of artworks in the style of Rembrandt, and I asked for realistic cats and dogs, and they're playing different musical instruments. And this is my exhibition. So a series of 12 animals playing different. I printed them out this big, and they're very sweet, and they hang in our music room above the piano, and the kids love it. They kind of play and they. But when I went to the print shop to get it, the guy handed me my prints. And he said to me, "Who painted this?" Rembrandt. Honestly. And somebody's. Shall I admit this person to the waiting room? So I asked one other thing though. I asked ChatGTP to write me a scoop, a press release, about recently discovered rare fashion items in a movie star's private collection, glass deco handbags. And I won't read the whole thing. That's in my paper. Read it. But it was very persuasive. You know, the collection includes this, and it's a major event in the fashion world. And some of the items are going on exhibition. And there's an Art Deco handbag designed by Rene. None of this is true. It's all hallucination. But I wanted to be sure there isn't such a thing as an Art Deco glass handbag. So I went to Midjourney and I asked Midjourney, create me this. And they're gorgeous. They're so lovely. Somebody should be making them. They don't exist, obviously, as the press release. None of that was true. But I thought they were so nice that I'm going to open a shop. And funnily enough, my father many years ago made glass handbags and the shop was called Susan. So I think this is rather fun. It's a creative move. So just to finish off, we're opening here a Pandora's box. And did you come across this recently? This is it's a work inspired by Vermeer. She's sitting in this painting was created and it sits, or photo, sorry, sitting in the Mauritius Museum because the original was moved from the museum, you know what I'm talking about, and put it in the Rijksmuseum for the Vermeer exhibition. And others were styles and here an homage to the girl with the pearl earring, and the rest of us were one of them. However, Google picked it up. And yeah, this is why I'm very concerned. And this opening of the Pandora's box, and it's recognized as one of the Vermeer images. And then similar to that, a painting by Edward Hopper turned up in and this is by a company that was using it for PR. So we can't trust these systems, so that's to be sure. They can't even spell trust. So. But what can we do? And I would say, keep calm and carry on. That's it. Thank you.
Wow.